Welcome to the Meridian Solid Waste Advisory Commission special meeting in August. It is August 11th. It is 3 p.m. and I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with roll call. Indicate if you're present. Mark Nelson, Steve Corey here, Scott Walters, Sean Keating, Tom Otte here. Megan Larson.
Here.
Karen Richmond. And Randy Spywak. Here. And Isabel Cowell.
Here.
Ex officio members, Rochelle Klein.
Here.
And Councilwoman Liz Strader. Quorum being present, we will go ahead and proceed with business. The first item on the agenda for consideration is adoption of the agenda. Are there any comments with the agenda?
No comments, Mr. Chair, but I would move approval of the agenda as written.
Second.
Further comments or sensing the commission is ready for a vote? All those in favor of approving the agenda as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Thank you. We move on to old business, and the item on old business is picking back up the FY22 Republic Services rate discussion. Rochelle, I'm not sure how you want to proceed at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think at this point, Rodney Remling's going to come forward and we have a slide to share and he'll move the presentation forward from our last meeting.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rodney Remling, Republic Services Finance Manager, 11101 West Executive Drive, Boise, Idaho. What you have here, or the annual price increase here is, it looks a little bit different and a lot less detail, but a little higher level of detail so that we can kind of get you a good view for this level of review. I would say that we have worked with the Public Works Department and the Billing Department, and they have reviewed and asked questions and requested changes. And so what we're bringing here today is a result of working together with Public Works and Billing folks. So the spreadsheet that we normally look at has been verified, and they're on board with that as far as the numbers all look good and look correct according to the assumptions. And so what you have here on the high level is a residential look at them. So is it slide up? Okay. Can we roll that up a little bit? There we go. So the numbers are there. So the annual price increase is based on CPI, and it's garbage trash, and it's about 4.34% on the change, and the contract allows for 90% of that, which brings it to 3.91%. Dollar amount on this shows that with the projected growth in Meridian, the increase to Republic Services is $304,233. That's the contractual piece of that. And so as we think about that, that incorporates two pieces. It's growth and price. But that's the 3.91% on the projected house count that we have. And that's growth at about 5%, 5.4%, 5.6 or 8% of growth that's going on in this market. The other components of the price increase from the residential component are non-contractual, but they have been a part of our discussions and the services that we provide for years. The non-contractual piece is recycling processing, and that's currently at $1.03. It's been at $1.03 for a year now. And so this is the second year we're asking to renew that at the same amount. So that's no change. So you might be hearing about recycling commodities are improving, and that the market looks, the market's looking a little bit better. To go along with that, we've got $12.59, about $12.60. I think it's $12.59. It says in the memo here. Yes, $12.59 per ton increase in cost. for processing those tons. And so that's a price piece that gets set for the entire year, and then it gets reevaluated annually. So the reason we are not asking for a change in that is because we have sustained losses that have not been recovered since we've been looking at this probably for about 4 years, I believe. We're looking at about a sustained loss of over $100,000 in the recycling area. And we've got increases in the cost to process. So we've not asked for a change in that. So obviously that's something we'll look at again next year on those rates. The second component of that is the household hazardous waste, and that's set at 18 cents, and it's remaining at 18 cents. And that's really flat year over year. There's really no reason to ask for a change. The growth in Meridian continues to drive demand in that program, and it's really a pretty flat processing. I mean, the rates go up, but they go up in levels. So it's really based on the number of headcount and the number of services that they provide on a weekly basis. And those invoices come through, and that's running within less than $5,000 variance. So we see no reason to change that. It is negative to Republic, so it's not a big deal to us. It's so close to balancing that we'll call it a balance. The next one is the alternative fuel tax credit. That's a federal tax credit. It is not guaranteed and is not expected to renew beyond December 31, 2021. That was renewed retroactively last year and then forward through 2021. And that also is non-contractual. Last year, we gave the city $61,000 back through the rate, and this year it's $54,427 projected in the 2022 year. And that's just a result of how much fuel we actually use with compressed natural gas in this contract. And I'd say since 2018, that amount has tripled. So it's gone up over the course of the lifetime since we've been getting this credit. We've refunded back $160,000, and that's projected through the end of 2022 to be about $210,000 that's going back to the residents. It's not something that's contractual, but it's something that we provide back as a partner to the city of Meridian. And then the last item on here is the labor market adjustment that we're asking for. This also is not a contractual item. Our total, well, let me back up and try to give a little bit of flavor to the labor. We're facing, as so many are across the country, unprecedented labor shortages. We routinely give price increases for labor every year. They're running 2.25% to 2.5%, and they have been for more than a decade. I can go back to 2007 and show you where we have given 2.5% to 2.25% through that time frame. The average CPI over the same time frame is between 2.25% and 2.5%. So the components that we've been asking for in labor have pretty well matched our ask for increases. So we've been giving 2.25% to 2.5%. CPI has been 2.25% to 2.5%. And then what we've been facing for the last 3 to 4 years are union campaigns and a difficulty in getting labor. And it's really ramped up in this last year to where we have severe shortages in labor, and we've had to increase wages about 12.5% this year. So what that means to the Meridian, when we look at that labor for the Meridian contract, that's a little over $200,000 increase to Republic Services to provide service here in Meridian. So the increase at about 12.5% is just over $200,000. What we're asking, and that's across all lines of business. It's not just residential. It's residential, commercial, and industrial lines, 200. So what we're asking for is a labor increase in those same lines of businesses. What we're talking about strictly here is the residential component. So we're asking for I'll round it to $53,000. We're asking for $53,000 in the rate. That's about 0.67% of the total ask that we're asking for. What I have below there is what the residential labor looks like. So the residential labor increase is 135,000. So of the 135,000, we're asking for 52 from the residents. That is 39% of our increase in expense. So Republic Services is shouldering 61% of the increase in the residential line of business. Now I'll just go ahead and comment on the whole labor increase of 200,000. Republic Services is shouldering 50% of that, and that we're not passing 100% of it through, even through the other lines. So the overall split that we're asking businesses and the citizens of Meridian to shoulder is half of the increase. It's weighted to commercial and lighter in the residential, being it's about 50% overall, 39% in the residential that we're asking for. So those are the big components of the residential price increase. Again, 3.91% is the contractual piece of that. When you factor in the different changes that we have, the VTEC or alternative fuel credit offsets the increase that we're asking for in the labor. And so we get to 3.88% overall. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, Rodney, I have a question on the recycling piece. Well, I appreciate that Republic is not proposing an increase on that service. I'm just a little confused on the logic there, given that you've incurred a cost increase. What's the thinking
So,
for that?
okay, so there are two pieces of it. So there's the market and there's the market on the sales price, which we kind of talk about in two pieces. So the market is improving right now. So demand for cardboard and some plastics is improving. And so the cost is, or the price for those commodities is improving. On the flip side of that, so is labor and transportation and a lot of other things. So the cost to get that to market has also increased. So we're talking about two sides. We're talking about the revenue side and the cost side. And so when we look at those netting together and the uncertainty of the market and given previous losses continuing to weigh in here, we're saying leave it alone. If the market continues to improve, we'll have a different scenario next year. If it reverses, again, we'll analyze it again and work with Public Works on the topic again.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other commissioners?
Mr. Chair.
Tom?
Thanks, Rodney, by the way. I appreciate that staff has gone through and vetted the numbers out. Does staff have any comment on the actual labor increase, market increase itself?
We have analyzed the numbers, and at this point, we are comfortable with what's being presented. And this is this is affecting industries across the nation, and we feel that this is fair.
Thank you.
Rodney, could you tell me what your expectation is next year? We've been told that the market labor column is a one-time only thing. Obviously, that works with the presumption that we hope that this is a very short bubble in the labor market. So I won't hold you to that. But next year's presentation, presuming that that assumption holds true, that column would be not present on our spreadsheets.
That'd be correct. It would become a part of the service piece of it. And so it remains a permanent part going forward. It neither falls off nor remains identifiable to the side like it is now. Again, we're calling it out because it's outside of CPI, it's outside of the contract. But my expectation is it becomes a part of the permanent rate. And as I said, we're overall shouldering 50% of it. So 50% doesn't even get covered. So we'll continue to shoulder those losses in the future as well. If no changes, then we would just be looking at CPI and the other components plus or minus, whether they be commodity market improvements or worsening in that market. We would continue to look at those things, but not labor.
And I notice on the spreadsheet that we've just been given, it's residential and commercial. And your letter that was drafted to us says industrial roll-off pricing is still being calculated. Is that where we're at right now? Is what's being presented to us as commissioners is just the commercial and the residential portion? And I guess your presentation only covered residential, so.
So we've called out residential, and that's simply from the perspective that that's the highest, that receives the highest scrutiny from the public. Commercial businesses don't tend to scrutinize the rates, neither do industrial folks. Not saying they don't pay attention to it, but they don't show up at council meetings, we don't talk about it. When we did go over those rates with Public Works, all rates were considered and all rates are part of this. So we're asking for approval on all rates, residential, commercial, and industrial. So the presentation is focused on residential, but it includes all. So we don't have, when you look at the rates overall, we stay under the 3.91. So we have some pluses and minuses, but we don't exceed 3.91%.
And that is to say that the preliminary spreadsheets we were given on the industrial rates, some of those reached 5% and 5+%. Is that still the case for the industrial roll-offs?
So not on halls themselves. So what you get is you get into daily rate or daily rent numbers. So some prorated rates will spike like that because of the small numbers. So a daily rent number is very small. It might be an increase of a few pennies, but it reports as a high percentage. So it's on a weighted average, what the components of the bill are, it's going to be under 3.91%. When that customer looks at the service, disposal, rent, all those things, they're going to come in under 3.91, even with the labor.
Mr. Chair.
Tom?
Rodney, I guess I have what I would consider a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway. Given that the VETC is not a requirement, it's just a share that Republic does, if that covers that labor market adjustment, wouldn't it just behoove you to keep that this year?
We've had a history of sharing that with the city. We, in fact, cut a check already to the city. The city returned it to us with the desire of lowering the rates. So we consider it a part of being a good partner with the city of Meridian. And so we are not planning to keep it. This is going to continue through December 31, and our plan at this point is to share it next year as well. At a similar amount. It'll depend on what it actually comes in at, but this is something we've done with the city since it's been offered.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Randy?
I guess being our newest member of the commission and having no background, I started doing my own research. Rodney was kind enough to share a long telephone conversation with me and filling me in on what has transpired. I did receive from Joanna a considerable amount of documents going back, actually 37 years when we, the first, it might have even been the first contract, but a contract with SSI started way back, followed by a gentleman who used to do garbage and trash removal back prior to that, when Meridian was a small town, not like it is now. Then the contract, the franchise agreement was transferred, I believe, in 2012 to Republic Services, and is basically, with the exception of, I'm hoping, a handful of MOUs that I don't have copies of that speak to all the things that Republic does that are not contractual, that are not spelled out, or actions by city council, and I haven't spent a lot of time trying to take a look at those. So a lot of things that give the appearance that it's a good company dealing with a good city council and sharing information, but I don't know how much protection that provides either one of us or the taxpayer. I'll give you an example. If I receive my city water bill or the trash bill where we get our trash, water, and sewer, and ask a question, and I tried to look at it through the eyes of a taxpayer. Meridian, there's not a lot of information out there. There's nothing in the contract that looks at performance, cost. It takes 7 years to question one if you want to give notice unless it's your contract. So it's kind of difficult for someone to evaluate the level of service, the quality of services being provided, and the cost of the service, since it's not required to be provided. Now, Rodney, I went to the national office. I went to Phoenix, and to file as a public corporation, you file a Form 10Q with the SEC. And I was just curious over the first 6 months of this year, how was Republic Services doing nationwide? I understand that what we have in Meridian doesn't provide every service that is provided by Public Services nationwide. We don't own a landfill by the county. So that's revenue that we can't, or that Republic can't generate. But by and large, we do other things, garbage collection, and hazardous waste that's not in our contract. Could be in MOUs that I don't have. Same thing with recycling. And I think parties have tried to do positive things, and not some of the craziness that you see some of our sisters on the East Coast have done. But you look at the 100 and some odd pages of the Form Q at the corporate level, and Republic's in the first 6 months of the year during COVID had well over a 35% increase in net profit. And even a letter from the CEO that was sent out or put on the webpage, I think he used a higher number. I don't know where he got it, but so as a taxpayer, I would then say to the city council that we're supposed to give advice to, why are we talking about a rate increase when this corporation has had a 33% increase in profit just the first 6 months out of the year, which included those months in which it was hard to get labor. Now that's looking at it at a national level and really isn't fair to look at that just in Meridian. But we really, as a commission, don't have a whole lot of say-so on this. Contract is pretty clear, and the words that Bill Neri said at our last meeting are exactly right. It's an automatic increase, period. Those 2 words, regardless of performance, regardless of cost, regardless of anything. CPI. So city council goes through the process to approve it, but it doesn't have to be substantiated or verified. On the other side of the coin, in years where the CPI did not cover cost of operations plus whatever the expected profit margin is, because this is a for-profit business. It's not a not-for-profit. And the CPI doesn't cover it, then we leave Republic Services out there hanging as to not making it a profitable business. Do you have to you have to cover losses from prior years with profits from a current year or vice versa? I would strongly recommend, even though we'll go through the approval process of approving the rate increase that CPI says they're going to get anyway, it may be time that both parties take a look at this 37-year-old converted 21 years ago to a franchise agreement to figure out a way how we protect citizen and Republic Services. When there's costs that they have done everything they could do to control and can't, like the labor, it ought to be recognized. The other side of the coin, when there are no cost increases, to have a CPI increase period isn't fair to the taxpayer. I think we need to find a way to protect both parties and take all the things that I'm assuming Bill has in MOUs that are not addressed in this franchise agreement, put them in the form of a legal contract as well. Hadn't been touched in a long time. I understand it was reviewed 6 or 7 years ago, but I don't know what the outcome of the review was. I did call Boise. Boise does have a cost based contract, different than a CPI based contract, and have not gotten back from them yet a copy of their contract. It's a public document, but they are not fast. And I was curious to take a look at that to see how they addressed looking at operations, both on the revenue and expense side, to substantiate or a rate increase that is addressed by Boise City Council. Anyway, I just think we have a very antiquated relationship that doesn't protect either party. It's just a guarantee. And you hope that their real cost of operation doesn't exceed consumer price index increase.
Commissioners, further questions or comments of Rodney's presentation?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Neri. So my understanding is that the overall increase falls within the contractually permitted 3.91% CPI. So, but I do appreciate the transparency by Republic of showing the alternative fuel credit as well as the labor cost increase. What else? My question is, given that this labor market piece is included, can we still do this rate increase, or is there some kind of memorandum of agreement to cover that labor piece, or are we okay since the overall rate is under the 3.9?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Larson, I mean, I think we need to memorialize that in some form as if the council agrees with it. I guess, and I apologize for being late. I actually logged in upstairs, but I couldn't get connected to the meeting, so that's why I came down. But I'm a little confused by your memo, Rodney, because when I read the first paragraph, it says the CPI adjustment based on the 3.91 is 65 cents per household. And then so when you add the 11 cents in for the labor and the 3 cents for the ETC, the additional 14 cents, I apologize, but I missed, how does that, I see this number here is 3.88 and that number is 3.91. But what's the difference between this first paragraph and the ending paragraph? Did I miss?
So thank you for the question. I've tried to keep each section pure in itself. So when I talk about the CPI related increase is 65 cents. And each piece layers on or takes off. The VTech is actually an increase this year as well because it was a bigger refund last year than it is this year. So each paragraph addresses its own topic. So 65 cents is the CPI related change to the rate. And so looking at each piece of that, it all adds up to 79 cents overall. So when you drop down to the very last paragraph, it identifies what all the changes are. So it kind of rolls it up in the concluding paragraph.
So I think, I guess, a couple of things, commissioners, and I guess the council's recommendation that they're seeking from you is, first, if you agree with both what's been presented, as well as the comfort of essentially adjusting some of what they can collect towards those other charges, we would like to memorialize that in some fashion with the council if they agree with that, so that it's clear going forward that the city each year is going to make that determination of whether or not they agree with that, or whether or not that's what they should do. The other question, as Commissioner Audi pointed out, is the council can certainly advise Republic that you don't need to return the VETC credit and that you can apply it to that rather than them writing us a check and then the city writing them a check back. So, I mean, there certainly has options, but I guess that's whatever however you want to fashion that recommendation. But I think we definitely want to continue to capture anything that is an annual discussion. The recycling processing charge, it's an annual discussion on whether the city wants to accept that payment. And the same thing with labor. I don't know what the labor market's gonna look like a year from now. And again, I don't know the council's desire on whether or not that labor cost is a shared expense or not. I mean, that's really their call. So I think they'd be looking for any of those things in your recommendation on what you as a commission are willing to recommend.
I appreciate that. And I'm not trying to complicate things more than they need to be, but I think the transparency of showing that credit coming back as we've done in prior years and not just kind of absorbing it and applying it to somebody else is a good idea, even
Good.
though.
No, absolutely. And again, I think I apologize. I think that's the direction. I guess my short answer should have been, yes, we need to memorialize it, and whatever else you want to do is up to you.
Mr. Chair,
Tom,
additional question from Mr. Neri, just to really put you on the spot. So in going forward, if we were to memorialize this, would that market labor adjustment be considered in next year's CPI increase? Or would we remove that amount before the CPI increase would be done?
You probably know this answer better than I do. So I think, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Mr. Adi, I think we would have to have that clear understanding with Republic on where does that fall as to what that CPI adjustment is going to be and what that's related to. Because again, this is an unusual request. We haven't had it before. Again, we recognize there's a fluctuating marketplace out there, so we understand that. But I do think we want to make sure we're clear with both us and our franchisee. What does that mean for the future?
Mr. Chairman,
Randy,
this is what I mean by about being confusing when we're trying to approve a rate increase based on information that is not in the agreement, not in the contract, franchise agreement. The alternative fuel credit that we receive back, there's nothing that says they have to give it back. There's nothing that really recognizes that it'll go on in the future. So if you ignore that and you just look at the CPI at the rate, and then you add to it the labor market, then we would be exceeding CPI. So by putting that in this page, it gives the impression that we're under CPI, but it's repeating something we've been doing unofficially in the past for years. I think it's time that we quit being unofficial beyond an MOU if we have one and spell it out what it is, so that if we had a case like this, a contract that was based on true cost and audited financial statements, then the labor thing would have taken care of itself. It's something that Republic didn't do. They had to do it had to pay those salaries to have workers to provide the service. You substantiate that. But just by saying we're at 3.88, no, we're at over 4%. The alternative fuel credit is just a very nice thing that Republic has done. And there's some other things. There's a whole bunch of services that Republic is providing the city of Meridian. We as taxpayers and our property taxes don't have to pay to the city, that the city doesn't have to then purchase from Republic. None of that is in the contract either. There's a lot of them. So I'm not sure, Bill, how we would even approach this. If we just approve what the franchise agreement says, then you'd have to take separate action to approve additional above CPI to cover labor that I'm not opposed to do. Is that permanently part of the base? Because I think that's what is expected. Rodney can tell you, I think that once that's in their base, it stays. It doesn't go back out.
Yes, that was the answer to my question, Steve's question.
Yeah.
commissioners, additional questions of Rodney?
Mr. Chairman.
Bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I think maybe for context, and I don't know if this helps or does nothing to move this conversation along. My understanding of our agreement we've had with both Republic, SSC prior, and going back as far back as Commissioner Spiewak has looked at, it's a trash contract. That's what it is. It's to pick up trash and pay for the costs of disposal. And that's all it ever was intended to do initially. All the other additional services, yes, I agree with Commissioner Spiewak. Many of them are essentially agreements that have existed over time, that they provide free pickup services for lots of city facilities. And we add facilities on and they've added those to their service routes. And the city doesn't pay for any of those things. So our citizens do gain great benefit from that because someone have to pay for it. And by providing those services and doing that, we've had a great partnership with both Republic and SSC. I don't disagree with you from a lawyer's perspective. I'd rather have all of that spelled out. It's a lot easier to deal with and enforce. And the city council has had conversations over the years of, do we need to do that? When is a good time to have that conversation with Republic? When do we want to do that? I mean, to be fair to both sides, because there's been very little problems to address. The general way the city has done business in lots of things with contracted services, no matter whether it's a franchisee or it's simply a vendor that we've contracted with for some level of service, Blue Cross or anybody else. We look at two things. We look at price and we look at service. The quality of service that we get is very good. The few hiccups that happen on sometimes dailies based on time of year, sometimes occasionally based on a program, are addressed and they're taken seriously, and Republic responds. And so those service issues don't become real problems. From the pricing standpoint, I also agree with Commissioner Spiewak. The pricing is really hard to define, and it's really hard. And we've had these conversations in the past with both mayor and council. The cost of picking up trash with primarily one location to take it to is relatively similar, no matter who does it. The cost of trucks, the cost of fuel, the cost of transport, cost of disposal are all relatively the same. So if you feel like you're getting a decent price relative to the marketplace and your quality of services are good, there isn't a pressing need to redo it. And that's the reality of how we've functioned for many, many years here in the city. Is that a great business model for the next 25 years? Yeah, probably not. I mean, there probably will be desire to do that. So again, if the recommendation of the commission is to, again, just ask the city council to keep that on their radar, make sure they keep evaluating that. You know, there is a long runoff period if that were to take place, or again, that gives there a lot of opportunity for negotiation between the parties. There's certainly a lot of ways to do that. But I agree with Commissioner Spiewak. I mean, you know, again, without that fuel return, which is a very nice, generous way of offsetting some of the impacts and costs would be to the taxpayers, who are essentially asking for an increase above what is allowed. So recognizing that, and if your recommendation is that, again, that labor cost be a one-time only and reevaluated annually on whether or not that's a base cost, you should make that recommendation if that's what the commission wants. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, but that's kind of why we are where we are. I don't think it's an intention by anybody, both the city or the Republic, to ignore the fact that a lot of what we do is based on mutual agreement. It is based on mutual agreement, and it works. And so, yeah, I'm not going to say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I mean, I know for a lot of reasons, that's why we haven't made a great movement to change and memorialize every little thing. Will we get there someday? Will that be a desire, maybe of both Republic and the city? It could be. I don't disagree with that. At this point, it's worked pretty well.
Chairman.
Randy, go ahead.
Let's think tomorrow, for whatever reason, Republic Services sells XYZ trash collection, garbage collection. XYZ says, we've got a base that was just approved, a rate of X. Doesn't say it's for 1 year, doesn't say it's X. Any money, we're going to cease providing all the freebie services to the city. The city can pay for it just like the taxpayers pay for it. Those are and taxpayers would pay for, obviously, the city part by our own taxes. But all that stops, and there would be no reason why a new company couldn't do that. They don't have to sign a new contract because it's missing here. It doesn't exist. So I'd like to make sure that whatever motion we make, if we approve the rate increase, one, we change the presentation to the city council. They need to know that it's above CPI, but we do recognize the services that Republic provides the city and the return of the alternative fuel rate to the city that have the effect of less than CPI to the taxpayer. We ought to recognize that, but we ought to start with what the true number is. And then I would strongly recommend that we, more than just say, keep an eye on it, that we do either as this commission or working with our own city staff and working with Republic, look at what a contract could look like. It protects Republic as much as it protects the taxpayer. Right now, they have no protection any more than what's spelled out in this contract. Technically, this conversation, if we gave notice today, you got to wait 7 damn years before you can do anything about it. That's right. If I read this correctly,
So,
there's no action we can take for 7 years.
so Mr. Chairman, I am going to disagree with you, Commissioner Piwak.
Good.
If Republic were to transfer, just like when SSC transferred to Republic, they're bound by the contract and all the MOUs that are attached to the contract. So all of the services, you're correct. The free services are memorialized, but they're not in an MOU, if I recall correctly. Oh, so they are part of the contract. So all of those things have been memorialized. They're not in the base agreement. The base agreement is a trash contract, but all of the other things have been memorialized in other agreements. So a new company couldn't simply say, we're not going to do that anymore. So again, there is no negative outcome to the taxpayers by the current business arrangement we have with Republic. Or if another company were to step in the shoes of Republic under the existing agreements that we have. So, I mean, there are protections in place. Again, looking at a longer term, more comprehensive contract. I'm not in this business of this. I know it's a very specialized area of the law that people deal with this, and that's all they work with is this types of contracts. In my opinion, and it's just an opinion, those get awfully expensive because we are no longer talking about friendly agreements like, yeah, this makes sense. This is a good community thing. No, this costs X. This is what it costs. You need to pay for that. You need to pay for this. You need to pay for that. All of those things end up being passed through the taxpayers. Looking, and I haven't in recent years, but I have in the past, we have for other reasons looked at other communities of similar sizes. And again, based on the programs, the cost of services for service picks up here in Meridian is very affordable compared to many other communities in the Northwest. Now, again, some of it's program driven, and so those add costs, but many of the things that taxpayers here enjoy the benefit of that are just donated services from them. But I don't want the commission or the council to believe that we're really agreeing to a rate because all the donated services under the MOU that they provide, that's not really it. That's not why we're agreeing to the amounts or whatever your recommendation is. It's based on what the CPI is, what they're asking for, the additional costs of services above and beyond what they've already done that isn't part of the conversation. Again, we're not talking about picking up trash at city facilities and parks and things like that. That's not part of it. It is simply the cost of the business. They're talking about with the labor market change and those kinds of things. So I would disagree with partly what you said. I just want to make that clear.
Mr. Chairman, then something is presented to city council. All city council can really do is confirm CPI and confirm any cost that is being asked to be added to the rate above CPI, which would be the labor. And only as icing on the cake could someone say, we've looked at this city, that city, that city, that city, and here's where we are. None of that's presented to us, and I don't know that that's been presented to the city council in recent years. If that's what staff is doing, they ought to have the information handy. It would have made life a lot easier knowing that we have a rate that is better than 16 other cities our size in the Northwest. But we don't have that. So basically what we're doing is just confirming CPI. And the second action, whether it's part of the first motion or separate, is that we agree to recommend to the city that we pay more than CPI because of the extraordinary labor costs that Republic has had to endure, whether that's a one-time or whether that is permanently in the base, which is the way it's presented here. I guess we'll have to figure out.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Audio.
I'd like to make a motion. I motion that we approve the Republic Services 2022 rate proposal as presented with a caveat, with a due pass recommendation to council and to include a separate MOU of a single year market labor adjustment, as well as I move we approve the recycle processing fee with no increase as presented by Republic.
Second.
Okay, if I may, of course, we aren't approving it, so
Sorry,
that's the minor change. we
Moving
just-
forward to council with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. And the second is comfortable with that.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second at this point. One of the things that I would like to do is to give Rodney the chance to get back to a seat instead of having to stand. So
Very much.
if there's okay. So we move on. We have a motion and a second on the floor. So we will proceed to debate the motion. If there are comments or debate in relationship to the motion, they would be in order at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Randy.
I will vote yes, only because I don't think we have any other choice. But I will, for the record, I want the minutes to reflect that as a commissioner, I think we're wasting our time. It just needs to be approved. There's nothing here to evaluate. These guys are following what the franchise agreement says, CPI.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Audi.
In response to Commissioner Spewak, I think this is a phenomenal topic to have at a future SWAC meeting to make a recommendation to council to either renegotiate or examine our current agreement in some sense. And then that would alleviate these perhaps for another year.
Did you amend your motion by saying that?
No, I didn't. My motion is still as stated. I don't feel this is the proper forum for contract amendment. I think we need to do that at a separate, non-special meeting. I agree with you. I just don't think this is the right forum.
Mr. Chair. Here shortly, I'm going to vote yes on our motion, but yeah, I didn't think it was a waste of time for me as a commissioner to have this whole conversation and learn a little bit more about how these processes work. And we might want to consider, these, tightening up the contracts, but not so much that you can actually be flexible and adjust without yet more processes in place. So right now, I don't feel it's broke, but it feels fair that we maybe codify a few things, but not just worried that we have so many line items and that we become kind of shackled ourselves from, a little bit of good work.
Mr. Chair, oh, I'm sorry.
I just don't think it was feel like it's a waste of our time at all.
Commissioner Larson.
Thank you, sorry. Mr. Chair, I would echo Commissioner Walters' comments. I think it's important to have the conversation for the benefit of the public so they can see how the rates are. So that they are evaluated by staff and thoroughly vetted and so forth. So I think it is an important exercise. And I would also, in consideration of the contract, I'm fine with that again for transparency and openness to the public, but I would consider that holistically. We are a very rapidly growing community and flexibility is important to add those different services that we have needed over time and kind of looking at that bigger picture. We're a different community than we were 37 years ago by far. And keeping an eye on that. And not the best possible services. for our citizens.
Members of the commission, additional comments or debate? Additional comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of passing on the rate discussion to council for their consideration with a do pass recommendation and including a recognition of the one-time nature of the market labor adjustment and a recommendation for passing another year extension on the recycled waste service charge. I believe I captured all of your points.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Is there any question on what we're voting on? Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Joanna, we have had a one-page graph that goes ahead and gives us the rate for Caldwell, Napa, Boise, Meridian, and such, just basically recognizing the cities, the rates for citizens in the Treasure Valley. I'm not sure if that was provided by Republic or what, but I'm hearing it would be good for us to start our next conversation at a regular meeting if we had some understanding of where our rates lie now versus other cities. Could you arrange with Republic to get that information to the commission?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Now, something bittersweet, but I want to acknowledge the service of Isabel Cow. For 2 years, she's been our representative from the Meridian, MIAC, and has been a valuable asset to the commission, contributor to the activities that we've had a chance to be involved in. And you're going to be leaving us to go to college. Certainly, we wish you all the best in college. And I really want to thank you for your service. I'm sure the members of the commission will take their opportunity as this meeting wraps up to do the same. And with that, then, of course, there's no new business on the agenda here. We will have our next meeting as a regular meeting on August 25th. We will do a review of these, I guess it'd be third quarter of the fiscal year. I'm not sure of what, well, let's see. And then I don't have my notes. We'll pick up the subject about the recycling fund and what we intend to do with it. And I'm not sure we have anything else on the agenda right now, but as always, if you have something you want us to pick up, I'm not sure how fast we'll get this other discussion into the agendas. We'll be drafting the agenda tomorrow. And it'll be posted about a week from now. So if you have anything that you want us to start considering, please get it to Joanna or I, and we'll go ahead and get it into the system. Is there further comments or items that need to be presented at this time?
Mr. Chairman,
Randy, Commissioner.
I heard the information correctly. The lady who maintained most of the records to the commission, all the MOUs and all of that is no longer with the city. Who was the person that maintained all your records, Bill, for MOUs all the way back?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, actually, all of those are maintained by the clerk's office. So the attorney that staffed this commission for a number of years basically kept them all, so, because she referred to them a lot, but they're all maintained by the clerk's office, and the Public Works Department has them as well. So they're still available, so there's no concern there.
Are those available online to take a look at?
You'd have to ask the clerk's office. I don't know how, you could certainly ask for all of those, because they're all public records, so
A lot of work to ask somebody to do that. I just didn't know if they were easily retrievable.
there are some that are easily retrievable, but I don't know specifically, so you'd probably have to talk with them. Mr. Chairman, if I could make one comment.
Please, Bill.
I do want to commend Isabel's service on this commission, because I've been here a long time, so I've seen many of the students on the various commissions we've had. All of them are very interested. They want to serve. They have an interest in government or interest in public service. And then there's some that are really special, like Isabel, who really want to do this, really are interested, come to the meeting. I don't recall any other youth commissioner coming to the meeting in the summer. That is stellar. Gold star, #1. I don't know any other students that come in the summertime. So there are some I've seen over the years that commissions really have melded well with them. And definitely Isabel has been a great asset, not just from a youth perspective, but from a commission perspective. And you will definitely be noticed and missed. Good luck to you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to echo Bill's sentiments and say, don't be a stranger. I know Baylor is far away, but you know, when we meet, and we would love to hear an update from you when you're back in town. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, it really has been wonderful into the process, not knowing any of it and coming out knowing much more. So I would like to thank you as a commission for welcoming in a complete stranger who knows nothing. Informed decisions about this commission and about regarding the city and the city's well-being. So thank you, and it really has been a privilege and an honor.
And yes, I was going to say thank you too, because if I remember right, you were had a lot to offer us when we had our road mapping group. And yes, you, as you mentioned, came out to a lot of extra meetings and helped us out, and appreciate the representation from your kind of age group.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roddy.
just as a final recognition, as the former liaison for this commission, I must say I was especially impressed by your work on the subcommittee, coming to us with ideas from other places and things you had seen and asked to vet and did some vetting on your own. And I also must say you're the only youth member that I've ever written a letter of recommendation for, so you will be sorely missed.
And I will note that Chris, as he was moving up into the first row, was nodding his head quite vigorously. So I think Commissioner Spywecki will be able to track down those documents for you. So with that, our business is complete for this special meeting. And I will go ahead and declare it adjourned. It is 4 p.m. Thank you for your service to the city.